What's up, dudes? So, a little over 20 years ago, Sen to Chihiro no Kamikakushi, or better known in English as Spirited Away, finally opened in theaters around the world. It is a story of a 10-year-old girl trapped in a magical land filled with ancient Japanese spirits, where she must navigate through the new world's hidden dangers in order to save her parents. This film has become an important milestone for Japanese animation, and the reasons don't just include the gorgeous settings and masterful storytelling, but its universal appeal. This movie was one of the first of its kind to open worldwide and broke a lot of records along the way. So today, we're diving into Spirited Away and how it became one of the most iconic anime films of all time. Spirited Away is an original work written and directed by Studio Ghibli co-founder Hayao Miyazaki, a name that no person who claims to be an otaku would not have heard of. That's because he single-handedly produced some of the most significant films in anime history, and when it comes to movie production, he believes in 100% organic plot development. During a 2002 interview with Midnight Eye, he said, quote, "It's not me who makes the film makes itself, and I have no choice but to follow." Now take a look at our main protagonist, Chihiro, a sullen and whiny young girl who becomes much braver as the story progresses. This was not a coincidence, as Miyazaki's inspiration for the character came from his first retirement party, where he noticed a little girl withdrawn, sitting by herself. This got him thinking how bored she must have been, and even further, how the media generally catered to what boys liked. This inspired him to create a hero that young female moviegoers could look up to, which was quite progressive for the time. During that same interview with Midnight Eye, he even recalled, quote, "Every time I wrote or drew something concerning the character of Chihiro and her actions, I asked myself the question whether my friend's daughter or her friends would be capable of doing it." The movie is filled with scenes inspired from events in Miyazaki's life. For example, one of my favorite scenes was when Chihiro and the onsen crew cleaned up this extremely disgusting spirit by pulling out every rotten thing you'd find in a New York City subway. This actually was based from a real-life experience where a young Miyazaki cleaned his neighborhood river by pulling out garbage, which even include a bicycle where he wrapped a rope around the handlebars, just like in the film. It was even a happy ending in real life too, as the fish would eventually return to the river. Spirited Away was a commercial success, grossing a whopping $400 million from a tiny budget of $19 million. It was Japan's top grossing film for nearly 20 years, and has won nearly every prestigious award in the country, including their biggest, the Japan Film Academy Award for Best Picture. But in 2003, the film would go and nabbed their greatest achievement, the Academy Award for Best Animated Film. Though it was unexpected among many, there was one person who knew this would happen, and it was his persistence that laid the groundwork for this historic moment. Now, the name John Lasseter may not sound familiar to most, but you know his body of work. Toy Story, Cars, and A Bug's Life are just some of the many movies the former Pixar CCO was responsible for. But way before then, he was a young animator at Disney, and in 1981, he attended a demonstration where Ghibli showed a sequence from Miyazaki's directorial debut, Lupin III, The Castle of Cagliostro. This left quite an impression on him, which he even recounted, quote, "I felt that this was the first animated film I had seen that had a vision to entertain for all ages." A few years later, Lasseter returned the favor by showing Ghibli two short films, called Red's Dream and Luxo Jr. Yes, that baby desk lamp who would go on to become Pixar's mascot. Now you have to remember, this was the 1980s, so CGI was a technology well in its infancy, and Miyazaki, an old-school mangaka, was not particularly fond of emerging technologies, which you would expect. But surprisingly, even he was impressed with the films, and a beautiful friendship was born. It would take nearly 15 years later until the two men reconnect, when Miyazaki showed their first ever screening of Spirited Away stateside, at Pixar Studios, in an attempt to lure a studio to release the American adaptation. After the viewing, Lasseter was so moved that he convinced Disney to buy the distribution rights and offered himself to be the executive producer. He even tapped Kirk Wise, co-director of the Academy Award-winning film Beauty and the Beast, to direct. Things were finally heading in the direction Ghibli had long hoped for, because their previous film adaptations in America had been dismal up to this point, to put it kindly. Lasseter heavily campaigned to build visibility for consideration at the Oscars, and he was so confident in his product that he even placed a full-page advertisement in Variety magazine. Those efforts were not in vain, because on March 23, 2003, Spirited Away earned the venerable Japanese studio their first Academy Award for Best Animated Film. Now, The Wind was groundbreaking for Ghibli, and anime in general, because it put the niche medium even further on the map. The US already had anime fever with hits like Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon, but these adaptations were heavily localized as companies would change parts of the characters and the story they believed would alienate audiences outside of Japan, who just didn't understand the culture. So if you remember watching early episodes of Pokemon, then you would know Brock would mention how much he loved jelly donuts. Those were not jelly donuts, but in fact onigiri, or Japanese rice balls, which are absolutely bomb, by the way. Now, unlike most anime in America, Spirited Away proved localization wasn't necessary, as they could maintain their original vision through adaptations, and audiences would love it much the same. Now, Spirited Away was not a box office juggernaut in America, but it still brought in very respectable numbers. With over $13 million grossed, it is currently 12th among the highest grossing films stateside, which is not bad for a 20-year-old movie. It still beats out recent successes like Your Name and My Hero Academia, Two Heroes. Spirited Away's Oscar win immediately turned Ghibli into an annual contender, where they also received nominations for Howl's Moving Castle, The Wind Rises, The Tale of Princess Kaguya, When Marnie Was There, and The Red Turtle. Even Studio Ghibli received their first nomination in 2018 with the beautiful slice of life Mirai. Unfortunately though, no anime film has yet to win the prize since then. Spirited Away is a wonderful film that forged a new path for anime around the world. Thanks to an unlikely friendship with a shared vision for success, this beautifully told tale legitimized anime for many during a time when it was still pretty foreign. If you have not seen Spirited Away yet, then what are you waiting for? You can stream the entire movie on HBO Max along with the rest of the Studio Ghibli library, and I guarantee that you won't regret it. And once you check it out, tell me all about it in the comments. Please subscribe to my channel for more iconic moments in anime history. You can find me on Twitter @HassieFit, or even send me an email at hassieverse@gmail.com. I'd be willing to bet that we'll probably never see another anime do what Spirited Away accomplished. But it doesn't matter, because anime has become a staple of pop culture, and it wouldn't have happened without this revered film. And that, after all, is what's important. Thanks for watching, and stay nerdious.